What's going on, everybody? I'm here to just show you a quick deck tech for a Tiny Leaders deck that I've been working on. Now, Tiny Leaders is a format. It's kind of a dead format for those of you who don't know that is in the card game Magic the Gathering. Effectively what it is, it's very similar to like Commander or Brawl. The big difference is you can play with any card outside of a small ban list. You have to have a Commander. It's a 50 card deck instead of a 100 card deck or a 60 card deck. So effectively you have a Commander that has 3 converted mana cost or less. So essentially it means that with their pips in the right hand corner there, you can't have more than 3 mana. Same thing goes for every spell in your deck as well too. It's got to match the color identity of your commander that you choose, and everything has to be 3 CMC or less as well. So essentially you have 49 cards plus your commander. So the nice thing I really like about Tiny Leaders is it's a pretty good budget format to kind of get into. And I think it's great for new players that maybe are brand new, that may find a commander deck to be a little bit too daunting. You can always start off with this, and then kind of build off of it as well too. It's what I kind of did to start playing commander. It helped out with my deck building quite a bit more. I'll kind of go more into that, maybe the philosophy of it as well too in the future. But for this one, I want to show more about the deck tech that I'm working on and a pretty good budget start for anybody that's wanting to get started there as well too. So feel free to give it a try. So the deck is Adeliz, the Cinder Wind. You probably knew this from reading the title of the video itself there, but effectively Adeliz, she's a 3-drop commander. So 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 of the other color there. It's a 2/2 for 3, so that stat's not super great. However, it does have flying and haste, and then what I call super prowess down here. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, wizards you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So not only is Adeliz, since she's a wizard, buff herself up every time you cast an instant or sorcery, but also if you're playing more of a tribal strategy and have wizards in your deck, they will get stronger as well too. I've seen a couple of different people build these decks different ways. Some people are focused just solely on the spell casting side of things, where they want to cast as many instants and sorceries as they can. Other people focus on the tribal synergy, where they're like, oh yeah, we want to go through and have as many wizards as we can. You can honestly have the best of both worlds. Wizards like to cast spells, especially with this deck going as well too. So I definitely recommend trying it out there, because Adeliz really get pretty good at pumping herself up and being a big threat, but also pumping up a board of wizards as well too. So this deck is going to be more of a tempo-based deck. It's a good build around for the commander. A couple pros to it. It's cheap to build because it is an uncommon commander. So that means that it was printed at the uncommon rarity in Dominaria. And I think at the time of me recording this, it's like 25 cents. A little bit more for the promo version like I've got here from my pre-release. But it's pretty cheap, and the 50 card format for Tiny Leaders is pretty cheap as well too. And the nice thing is you can start off with this deck in Tiny Leaders and then upgrade it to a budget commander by just adding some pieces in there as well too. So I'm going to go over and show you a few of the cards I'd recommend as far as a focus for your archetype. And your deck may differ from mine as well too. So let's go ahead and kind of speed run through these here. I'm going to set Adeliz right there. So the first one here is cards that can push damage through. I highly recommend checking out cards that are similar to these 3 that I've got in this specific deck here. Brute Strength, it's 1 red, 1 of the other color there. It gets +3/+1 and gains trample till the end of turn for the target creature it's choosing. It's instant speed as well too, which is awesome. Now when you have Adeliz on the battlefield, you might as well read it that if you're targeting Adeliz, it's going to become a +4/+2 and trample instead. So pretty solid at that point there. The 2 CMC, it's a little bit high as far as what you might want to be doing, especially when you cast a lot of spells, but there's certain cards that can help out with that. Temur Battle Rage is the other card here. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn, and that creature also gains trample until end of turn if you control a creature power 4 or greater. Now, if you've already played a spell this turn, and then you play Temur Battle Rage, Adeliz will then have 4 power. Because every time you cast an instant or sorcery, she's going to give all wizards +1/+1, so I would make her a 3/3, play Temur Battle Rage, make her a 4/4, and now you've got a 4/4 double strike trample creature. You can make her really big, you can make a lot of the wizards on your team pretty big as well too. So highly recommend looking at this card here. This is an all-star in Modern and Pauper and several other places as well too. Why not look at it in this deck as well too? There's other cards that give creatures double strike as well too that are 3 CMC and less. So if you like this effect, go ahead and throw more in your deck. And Built to Smash. I throw it in here because it's literally 1 red mana. This is what you're looking for. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. If it's an artifact creature, it gains trample to end of turn. Now, I don't care so much about the trample side on this because I don't have any artifact creatures. Now, if you happen to do so, awesome, great. That's going to help you out a ton. But with Adeliz, I'm usually making her the target of my spells and abilities. With her having haste and flying, she's already got evasion. So effectively, you can read this as for 1 mana, give your attacking creature +4/+4. I think it's pretty solid. If you pair this up with your Temur Battle Rage, you go through, and now your Adeliz is essentially a 6/6, and then throw this on there, a 7/7 trample double striker. That can make a pretty big swing right there, and I definitely like that. The next part I want to focus on is cards that protect or provide tempo plays. With this being a tempo deck, you want to make sure that you have kind of tempo plays in there. What I mean by tempo is that when your opponent is playing, you're going to want to go through and you're going to play spells like Vapor Snag, which is going to go through and help out with your evasion. If they're playing flyers or things that get in your way, you can play these spells. And when you think about when you're playing instants and sorceries here that are more tempo based, every time you're casting an instant sorcery, Adeliz is getting a little bit stronger for the turn, so she's going to give herself +1/+1. So you can get rid of your opponent's creature or even save your own with this one. Just know whoever's creature's getting sent back, they're losing a life. Same thing, unsummoned, very similar at that point there. Target creature gets sent back to its owner hand. Again, you can save your own creature or get rid of your opponent's creature to move him out of the way. Blink of an eye, very similar. I like to call this the budget cryptic command because it's also a little more flexible, because for 2 mana, you send a non-land permanent back to its owner's hand. Then if it was kicked, you also get to draw a card. So for blue, and colorless, so 2 of any other color, and then blue, or just for the 2 mana here, you get to send your opponent's creature back, or hit the kicker cost, send your opponent's creature, or artifact, enchantment, whatever, planeswalker, draw a card off of it as well too. Pretty solid of a card, I like it. Diminish. Target creature has base power and toughness +1/+1 until end of turn. So if you've got a creature that now has trample thanks to one of your push damage, through spells, use diminish. Well, now you've definitely gone through, unless they have +1/+1 counters, you've lowered their chance of blocking you and helping you get a lot more damage through as well. Electricity is also a nice play with diminish as well too. For 1 red mana, deal 1 damage to target creature you don't control. Now the nice tip with this as well is if your opponent doesn't happen to have a creature on the battlefield, but you got Adeliz or maybe some group of wizards as well too, you can overload this without a target. So that means your opponent has nothing, you can overload it and then get a +1/+1 for your wizards till the end of turn with Electricity. You're going to see another spell that's a little bit similar later in the road here. Electrolyze, you can hit your opponent, dome them in the face there if you want to, or you can divide it, get rid of some of their smaller creatures as well too. But the nice thing is you get to draw a card. So you like to have cantrips in this deck with your instants and sorceries. You want to be able to do something, but then also allow you to draw that card, and that's going to help you really get those bigger turns and kind of get a chain of instants and sorceries going. So Electrolyze, pretty nice in the deck. Boomerang is an oldie but goodie. Return any permanent to its owner's hand. I'd play this when you're going up against opponents that are playing lands that come in tapped. Just go ahead and send either their tapped land back or their untapped land. Kind of screw them over a little bit for the turn. But if you send their tapped land back, well then you're going to get rid of them and slow them down, which is what you want to do. You want to be faster than your opponent, and you can also get rid of tricky things. Any permanent to its owner's hand is going to be pretty nice. And Tiny Leaders, it's not usually too crazy. Usually you're targeting lands, but you can target other things too. Lightning Strike, easy replacement would be Lightning Bolts. Now I like the foil of this and shocking that little goblin there, but 3 damage to target creature or player. So again, you can dome your opponent or get rid of your opponent's thing in the way and help boost Adeliz up. Cinder Sleep, you're playing a lot of instants and sorcerers in the deck there, so you're going to have spell mastery most of the time with this card there. You can tap up to 2 target creatures to help your creatures get through, and then you can also go through, if you have 2 or more instants and sorceries in the graveyard, those creatures don't untap for the next untap step, so you kind of really put them to sleep. Mizzy Mortar, very similar to Electricity beforehand. Instead, it deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control, so it's going to be able to get rid of some of the bigger creatures in the format, but you can also overload it for 6 mana. Now the thing is, and you want to keep note of this, is it's still less than 3 CMC. Your overload cost is not your converted mana cost of the deck there, but this one here. So you can still play this, hit your opponent's creature for 4, or if you happen to have 6 mana, and this is like the only card you got, you can wipe the entire board, especially if you're playing Tiny Leaders in a multiplayer format. And then Beacon Bolt, it's one of those that can get an easy replacement as well too, but I just like the fact that it's got the jump start on it, so you can discard, a card that you don't necessarily want in your hand. If you've got an extra land that you don't want, get rid of it if you want to. Or if you got a instant or sorcery, well, that's another way to kind of boost up the Beacon Bolt. Go ahead and discard that and then hit your opponent there with your Beacon Bolt. It's going to deal damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant sorceries you own in the graveyard or exile. So you're going to be able to get rid of most big creatures thanks to your spells in the deck already. Now the next section here are cards that draw or filter. Oh, I forgot one section here. Cards that protect you. I forgot to mention, Mizzium Skin is one of the cards I have in here to help protect Adeliz. Now, most combo decks with this one's pretty solid. You see this in Is It Blitz and a few other ones too, but if your opponent goes through, you can treat this like a counter spell almost for 1 mana. So if your opponent's playing Path to Exile or Swords of Plowshares or maybe Lightning Bolt or something and is targeting your creature, you can then play the spell, give your creature hexproof, and then now their spell essentially fizzles or gets countered because it no longer has a valid target. So keep that in mind with Mizzium Skin. It's nice because it also has Overload as well too. And then give all your guys hexproof if you got it. Dive Down, very similar at that point there to Mizzium Skin. Just the big difference is it only targets the one creature. Gives a little bit more of a toughness boost there, which can be solid, but gives your creature hexproof. Wizard's Retort is pretty much like a classic counter spell because you're playing mostly wizards in the deck there. So for a blue-blue, counter target spell. Or blue-blue colorless if you have nothing else in the battlefield to counter target spell. Negate, I like it because it's shiny. It's the Jace version there, but you get to counter a target non-creature spell. It gets rid of most things that you have problems with, and you got plenty of creature removal in your deck as well too already. Counter spell, just classic blue-blue counter target spell. Now, to the card draw, card filters side of things here. Opt is a kind of a pioneer staple at that point there. For 1 blue mana, you get to scry, like the card on the top, go ahead and keep it. Or you can throw it on the bottom if you don't, and then draw a card there. It's going to help think of this as you pay 1 blue mana, you have +1/+1 to your wizards, scry 1, and draw a card at that point there. Great thing to chain different spells together. Ponder, very similar at that point there. Now you get to really manipulate your deck a little bit more with Ponder. Shuffle them if you don't like it. I mean, Ponder is definitely one of my favorite blue cantrips at that point there and is legal in this format. So go through, check out the cards. If you like the group of them, awesome. If you don't, shuffle it up and you might get something different and get to still draw a card and give +1/+1. Anticipate's very similar to Ponder. The big difference is it's going to cost 2 mana. It's instant speed, though, which is nice. So you can play this on your opponent's turn. Check out the top 3 cards of your library. You're not necessarily drawing a card, but you get to go through and draw 1 card and then put the rest at the bottom if you don't like them, if they're just straight trash. Nivix Guildmage is a great mana sink. You know, it is also a wizard, which is awesome at that point there. So unlike some other wizards in the Is It Guild for the later reprints there, this guy does not have to tap there. You get to draw a card, discard a card, draw a card, discard a card. It's going to boost up your spell mastery and some of the other spells in there that care about your instant sorceries there. But you can also copy target instant sorcery spells you can control. So you can definitely go through and draw more cards off of this guy or help get more of your Teemo Battle Rages or some of your other brute strengths and stuff too with this guy to make your creatures bigger or even make himself bigger. Owen Speaker just helps kind of manipulate or fix your library at that point there. So you get to scry 2. If you don't like the cards, go and throw them on the bottom there. By turn 2, you're going to know what kind of cards you want. If you need lands, great. If you don't, you get rid of them, get other spells at that point there. She's also a wizard, which is great. Brainstorm is another classic and legal in this format there. Draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from your hand on top of the library in any order there. It's just going to help you with deck manipulation and be able to kind of shuffle through your deck as well too. And again, it's one of those 1 mana kind of cantrips that's going to boost up your team and also allow you to filter or draw your cards you want. And Divination, I just threw it in there because it's just, you know, it's 3 mana, which kind of stinks, but you get to just straight up draw 2 cards, which is okay at that point there. It's pretty decent. And just remind yourself every time you're playing, even just the ridiculously bad instants and sorceries, these are going to help boost up your entire team at that point there. So then now we're going to move on to the last part here, and this is just kind of my value cards, I'd like to say. Kiln Fiend is another solid addition to this deck. It may not be a wizard, but I mean, getting +3/+0 to end of the turn when you cast instant or sorcery, that's going to help out tremendously. One, Adeliz already cares about that, so your deck's built around it there. But Kiln Fiend, I've seen this thing do a one-shot kill on turn 3s and 4s, depending on what deck has been played in there. It's played in Is It Blitz, it's played in modern decks, it's played all over the place there. If you like spell slinging, you want to have a big creature to deal some damage, Kiln Fiend's where you want to go. And Goblin Electromancer is going to make all your instant sorceries 1 less to cast, and it's a wizard. So that's pretty awesome because you have a lot of spells that are 2 and 3 mana in the deck as well. So you've got some 1 one CMC stuff, so it's not really a matter, but every time you go through, just think of it. Your divination, now you get to draw 2 cards for 2 mana. Pretty solid. Send to Sleep, 1 mana to tap 2 of your opponent's creatures there. That's pretty great. Beacon Bolt, same thing at that point there. So Goblin Electromancer is definitely an all-star for the deck. Dragonite Servants, this is just a big fat blocker. So if things do not quite turn out your way for your tempo, or maybe you need to build your hand up, or stay a few turns at that point there, feel free to throw out this 6-drop that's also a wizard. Now it doesn't have Defender, which is great because then as you're playing more spells and getting things pumped up, it can get pumped up with Adeliz and then also swing it as well too. Very rarely do I have it come in for a 2/2 morph creature, but really, I mean, if you wanted to go over, I mean, literally, you reveal a blue card from your hand, which is a lot of your cards in the deck, and then boom, you get to see your opponent's hand, and that's going to give you some definitely good information advantage at that point there. And is it Signet? This can be more of a commander deck kind of card, but it works in this one as well too, just because it's kind of like a ramp at that point there. So you do have some bigger spells. If you play Is it Signet, you're going to be able to play a lot more spells in your deck a little bit faster, and a lot of the bigger spells as well. So those are my value cards that I've got there essentially. As far as the lands go, good old command tower. It's legal because you've got a commander, and it works because now you've got a land that taps for blue or red, and it doesn't come in tapped. Is it Guildgate? Comes in tapped, which kind of sucks. So definitely upgrade at that point there if you want to. Is it Boyworks? Very similar to the Signet. It's kind of like talking about those crew lands I was talking about earlier, where it comes in battlefield tapped, and then you got to return a land you control to your hand, but it does tap for 2 mana, which is pretty solid. So it's a good turn 2 play if you really wanted to, if you're just being slow and waiting to get Adeliz out. Or it can be a good late game play. Just make sure you play your spells and tap those lands before you play this thing and send a land back. You want to get as much value as you can before this thing hits the battlefield. Smolder Crater. I mean, while the cycling doesn't count as instant or sorcery, it is a way that if you don't need more lands, just go ahead and toss this thing to the graveyard, draw yourself a card. Temple Epiphany. While this one does come in tapped, it does let you scry one, which is pretty solid. So definitely say this is a pretty decent tapped land. It's probably one of the best tapped lands I have in the deck at that point there. Red or blue? Highland Lake. It's like the Guildgate. Nothing too special at that point there. It just helps fixing it. But the thing is depending on what group you're playing with, you can play with those tap lands and not have any issue whatsoever there. And then to round off the last little bit of the deck there, I do have 7 mountains, and then 6 islands in the deck there to kind of go through and round it out. So that is my 50-card deck of Adeliz of the Cinder Wind. Go ahead if you want more, let me know. If you want to see more tiny leaders or different formats, I'm thinking about showing off my Horde deck or a few other things at that point as well too. Or if you want some other deck tech or insight on some of my other decks, feel free to let me know. Deuces.